Hey, Mike, how are you, buddy?
Everything's good. Great stuff. I like this article, The Resurrection of the Traditional Rebuild, because I think in the what are they called, the millennials, they're having a hard time with the old school way of basketball, and now you're looking at the traditional rebuild. They didn't watch what we did back in the day, but this is old school. This is them just kind of going through the draft and kind of building assets, and and now we're starting to see the first step.
We certainly are. Listen, the Sixers have done things very differently up till this point, and really, frankly, I've been more impressed with what I've seen out of them the last couple of weeks than I have been for the last couple of years. I thought that Sam Hinkie was in a very tough spot in the draft where he counted on having the guard he wanted available, D'Angelo Russell. That didn't happen. And he went with an excellent player, the best player on the board, and a guy that, even though maybe it was a position they didn't see as a position in need, who will help them a lot immediately and can help them a lot in the future. So I love that pick. And then the trade last night was a heist. It was a lesson in how you use cap space, number one, and number two, how you take advantage of an inexperienced general manager that doesn't really understand the salary cap as well as he should. And Sam Hinkie did both of those things. And I think right now, that for the Sixers, it's very important that in these deals where they rent cap space at this stage of the rebuilding process, you need players instead of picks. They've done the pick routine, and they have a lot of picks in the future. But, it comes to a certain point in time, you got to get players on the floor and start to go from asset accumulation into roster building.
Yeah, and one of the big things, you mentioned it, they went after a team, and I said, a lot of people talk about the plan. What's their plan? I don't like their plan. I don't see a plan. Sometimes the plan gets deviated when you find somebody, and they found someone in a weak moment, it seems like last night, and if you don't have the right assets or the right cap space, you can't take advantage of that team. It seems that Sam Hinkie was waiting for the right team to take advantage of, and he found it last night.
He certainly did. He was looking to take advantage of the right team, and he found them. I mean, Sacramento is not being operated properly, and that's probably an understatement in terms of everything going on, but they're not being run very well, and they cleared cap space last night to make a run at a player that they lost today to Indiana. Monte Ellis signed with Indiana today. So they really they're not being run properly, but the Sixers, if they're not in position to do that, they don't get that done. And you're right, the cap space is important, but also having a realistic appraisal of where you are. They're not the Knicks, to the respect that they're trying to wine and dine all these unattainable free agents. I think one of the points that general managers miss, and one of the things I think Phil Jackson is learning here and going through this process for the Knicks, is this time of year, timing is crucially important. You lose guys to time. I mean, you're chasing the wrong guy. Someone else signs that guy from behind your back. You have to be careful. Sam Hinkie was not only had the cap space, but was in position to do that last night. He wasn't chasing an unattainable free agent at the time that deal came up. And listen, I've been very critical of Hinkie for the last 2 years. Sixer fans bomb me on Twitter like you wouldn't believe, because I don't think that you can get this done by intentionally losing year after year after year. And the example I always give that makes Sixer fans crazy is the Milwaukee Bucks, who really have done this rebuild fantastically well. And you see the spoils of that on a day like today, where Greg Monroe says no to New York to a max deal, no to the Lakers to a max deal, yes to the Milwaukee Bucks, because they have shown the glimpse of a winning program coming together. Players want two things, Mike. They want to win and they want money. And you got to be able to provide them both. Selling winning on spec is not enough for today's NBA player.
Yeah, I agree, Brian. I've been saying for a couple of years now, this is way off topic, but this goes back to LeBron leaving Cleveland. People saying, well, no one was ever going to go to Cleveland. Guess what? If they kept winning and he was as good as he was, someone would eventually have gone there. And you saw that the other day where Love signed a 5-year deal to go to Cleveland. Monroe goes to Milwaukee today. I think, look, you just said, if the team has the right plan, they have players there, good players, when they finally mature enough, they want to actually win. And they want to make money while they do it, but those teams, Cleveland just is going to have the highest payroll in the league.
Oh, yeah, Cleveland. First of all, Cleveland's going to be well into the luxury tax. Dan Gilbert's going to be paying. He's probably going to end up paying more in luxury tax than he pays in payroll. It's going to be a situation reminiscent of Brooklyn 2 years ago. The only difference is that Brooklyn was out in the second round of the playoffs. Cavaliers are probably going to go back to the finals. But Dan Gilbert's invested a lot of money in this team but they've really gone very far to keep that kind of team around LeBron James. But you have to have a winning program to sell. LaMarcus Aldridge is looking right now at San Antonio and Phoenix. San Antonio's may have to pay a little bit less to go to San Antonio, but it's attractive to him. He's leaving more money on the table in Portland because he doesn't believe that they can build the kind of winning program he wants to be a part of. Guys want to win, and you have to be able to show them that to be attractive free agents. It's not enough just to have money to spend. Because here's the other factor you have to keep in mind, Mike, in that cap space. Next year, when the cap jumps $23 million in a year, everybody's going to have cap space. Nothing so special about you with your cap space. You better have something else to sell to these players besides money. And that's the big thing here. And for the Sixers, that's part of it. It's time to start building a team. And it's time to start building a team that doesn't start with our pitch being if Embiid is healthy. There's got to be something else there.
Brian Geltzeiler from SiriusXM Satellite NBA Radio, hoopscritic.com, at hoopscritic on Twitter. So, if Embiid's healthy, let's take that out. Are we starting to see a team that has the makings of a team that can start to take a step in the right direction from the 37 wins over the last 2 years? Are they starting to look like a team that can at least compete night to night? They competed night to night. They didn't have a chance to win night to night, but they played hard, and they were in games. They just didn't have the talent. Are they starting to look like a team that if they play hard, that they might start winning some of these games?
I think they're going to be better this year. As it goes, you're going to have 3 top 10 picks from the last 3 years in your starting lineup in Noel, Stauskas, and Okafor. That's a start. That's something. That's 3 nice players. Stauskas can complement the big guys because he can knock down shots. He's a helpful player here. So it's the start of something. Are they going to make the playoffs or get 10 for the playoffs? No. But maybe you advance to 25 or 30 games, and you show that Okafor is a consistent guy, 18-8. Noel builds on really a great second half last year where he played terrific. Even a guy like Covington that can knock down some shots, he fits well. Do they need a point guard? Of course they need a point guard. They'll get somebody in to handle the ball and bring it up. Maybe it's Isaiah Cannon. That's not exactly your long-term answer, but you're starting to see the semblance of a basketball team, which is so different than last year when it was just a group of D-leaguers that really didn't belong. You had a lot of guys that were on the spent time in the Sixers last year didn't really belong in the NBA. Now, listen, I get that they're taking shots with people, but I did not agree with taking Dario Saric last year. I thought you needed somebody that could step on the court immediately. And after taking the Embiid risk, which I will say was a worthwhile risk because of where you took him in the draft and the potential that he has, you couldn't pile risk onto risk. And they did that last year. Now, at least, somebody made a joke the other day. Philly's actually drafting guys that don't have to go up and shake the commissioner's hand on crutches. That's a good thing. You're starting to get where guys are getting on the floor. Here's the other thing. I know there's a lot of fans that trust the process and are behind it, but nonetheless, you are reaching a point where, out of fairness to your fans, you have to at least show them some young guys on the floor that have potential to be part of the solution, that they can really sink their teeth into some of these guys, enjoy watching them play, and get an emotional investment in watching these players grow in front of them.
Well, that's the hard part, is not seeing the actual fruits of your labor. You wait through a season, and then you don't get to see the guys you take. That made it really hard. But I'll tell you, people who look at wins and losses, 37-2, not good, but they made big-time improvement last year, especially with Noel defensively. They shaved off 10 points a game from the year before. So Noel, they got something. Okafor, they seem like they have a nice low post player. Now Stauskas, plus the picks they have, and if Embiid plays, obviously that's the big if. It looks like they have the makings of something, but more importantly, it looks like the light at the end of the tunnel to stop tanking, whatever word you want to use, is finally there, that they're thinking about winning some games finally.
The whole key with last night's Sacramento trade was a player. You got a player to put on the floor and play now. That's what this has to be about. You're not, I hated the Carter Williams trade. I know you want to say he can't shoot, blah, blah, blah. The fact is that with Carter Williams and even KJ McDaniels, the defense was excellent. And Brett Brown's a great coach. He's going to coach guys up. They'll always play better than what they are playing for a guy like Brett Brown. But I hated that Carter Williams trade. Now, at least, the deal last night, it brings you a player that can play. And that's the thing that the Sixers need to do here. I understand the need for lottery picks. I understand trying to get that star, getting lucky in the lottery. There's a lot of ways to skin a cat in the NBA. And if you're going to wait around for the lottery balls to fall your way, you could be waiting for a long time. You look at, and it comes down to that piece I wrote. Look at Milwaukee. Look at the Utah Jazz that have built things properly. And what did they do? They identified a player in Ennis Canada that they're not going to pay. They saw through his development to a certain point and then decided that he wasn't for them, and they got a first-round pick for him. Granted, big protection, but a first-round pick. I thought that Philly should have done the same with Carter Williams. Even though they didn't love his development, it's hard for a young guard, especially when you have nobody around you. And listen, here's the other thing about the Sacramento trade. A guy like Jason Thompson is the type of veteran presence you need around young players. I know they had Bob Mute last year, but they lacked a lot of that. You need a couple of guys to show these young guys the ropes and what NBA life is like. And from what I understood from people I talked to that traveled with the team last year, there was really a juvenile, sophomoric type of atmosphere, and the approach to playing the game seriously and doing the work that needed to be put in wasn't always there. And it was hard for that coaching staff to not have the player to point to who would get that job done, do that, and teach the young guys.
Good stuff, Brian. Obviously now this is a team that, is still very young. They've made a ton of deals where, they got draft picks upon draft picks. Well, they got 7 picks over the next 3 years in the first round, including the ability to swap picks with the Kings. And I wonder, when you ask to swap with the Kings, is that kind of telling you that Hinkie's banking on himself, that this team is going to start, in a couple years down the road, that they're going to be better than Sacramento to the point where he says, look, if you're worse than us, we want to take your pick?
Well, Mike, let's start here. If the bar's only being better than Sacramento, you probably need to set the bar a little bit higher. With that said, yes. I think that I also think there's a little pressure from above here. I think ownership's been pretty patient up till now, but I was going to look at Hinkie and saying, Sam, we get what you're doing. We get how you're putting it in motion. They're also getting a lot of heat from the league. The league's looking at possibly in the next CBA changing a lot of rules based on what the Sixers have done. Michelle Roberts and the NBA TA is investigating some possible violations with how the Sixers have handled things. We have the Drew Holiday situation with the Pelicans. All these things tend to build up. But I also, listen, a little birdie told me that Hinkie had some issues and was stonewalled a little bit, frozen out, when he tried to make some draft night deals. You need to be able to work with people and have the people in the league around you. And agents haven't all been all that happy with him. It's time for the Sixers to stop with the we're going to be bad to continue to try to get picks and start to try to really build their team. And that's one of the reasons I'm so encouraged for Sixer fans and what I've seen in the last week with the Okafor pick, with trading and getting Stauskas and the deal with Sacramento. These are things that show you it's good use of renting your cap space, but it shows you we are interested in getting good young players. We do want to put them on the floor now, and maybe the days of us intentionally being bad, we're ready to wind down. I think that's really important, not only for the Sixers fans, but for the Sixers' perception around the league. You need to have a good perception around the league. Look what's happening in New York and in Los Angeles right now with the Knicks and the Lakers, what having a poor perception around the league can do to you when you go to sign free agents.
Yeah, Brian, that's a good point where you're starting to see teams that have great history and big cities, and people are looking at it and saying, what have you done for me lately? They don't want to play in L.A. They don't want to play in New York. They're going to Milwaukee and Cleveland. I think that's very telling of where this game is going. And I guess, as you write, the resurrection of the traditional rebuild, the overview of that is what? When you look at Philadelphia and you write this piece and you sit down and look at what they're doing, what would you say the overview of this article is about?
Well, ultimately, you need to make meaningful progress. Darryl, and I mentioned this in the article. I did an interview with Darryl Morey last February where he had said, ultimately, the way the league's set up now, you have to bottom out 1 year. And Darryl said he got very lucky because the Harden trade fell in his lap that he didn't have to bottom out 1 year. But you have to bottom out 1 year. But after you bottom out that 1 year, you got to start to show some meaningful progress forward. Philly's really on the verge of a third year of a bottom out here. I mean, it'll be a little bit better this year, but you got to show some meaningful progress. And my point in the piece was teams like Milwaukee and Utah and Boston did their bottom, have bounced from the bottom, showed some meaningful progress, and now all of a sudden they're getting an audience with free agents. Kevin Love, he didn't end up staying in Cleveland and didn't talk to Boston, but last year went and did a tour of Boston. Boston was on his radar. Milwaukee, Greg Monroe here. He doesn't go to the Knicks or the Lakers, goes to the Bucks. If they don't make meaningful progress, they're not in the game for a player like Greg Monroe. If you want to be in the game for free agents, and I don't always mean the big LaMarcus Aldridge, DeAndre Jordan type of free agent. I mean, even for the mid-level guys, you have to be able to sell them a program that they find attractive and have the ability to win it. You don't do that when you keep doing the tank year over year. And what I mean by the traditional rebuild is, losing games, it's not sexy and it's not cool. And the fact is, hey, do it 1 year and move on, but you're going to start to do it multiple years. That's not a traditional rebuild. The traditional rebuild is still what works in the NBA.
Brian, and I love the Monroe stuff. Great job by the Bucks. Great fit. MCW, Giannis. You got Chris Middleton. They got Parker coming back, and now you add Monroe. That's going to be a pretty good team. I love the way that guys are thinking now. I don't have to go to the place with the big money. I'll go where I fit the best. And if they have some money, that helps too. Brian Geltzeiler from Hoops Critic, at Hoops Critic on Twitter. And also hoopscritic.com, Sirius XM NBA Radio. Brian, great stuff, pal. Great article.
Mike, thanks so much. I appreciate the time, my man. We'll do it again soon.